and I'm with my friend who's this like Brazilian model with a French Canadian accent, and we're talking, and all of a sudden, 20 minutes into brunch, this guy turns around. He goes, "Where you from with that pretty accent?" And she goes, "Oh, I was born in Brazil and raised in Montreal." And he goes, "What's your name?" And she goes, "Amelia." And he goes, "Wait, hold on a minute." And he feels his way up out of the table. Stevie Wonder stands at our table and sings an entire 2.5 minute song in Portuguese called Amelia.
Bad decisions. Bad decisions. Bad decisions.
Matt Pinfield, my next guest, my current guest, is a journeyman DJ, VJ. He began his DJ career at Rutgers University, moved on to a radio station in Asbury Park. He was raised in East Brunswick. He started at an early age, heavily influenced by his older brother's record collection, which led him to start his own collection. His big break came when he landed my dream job as a VJ at MTV. I first discovered Matt when he was hosting 120 Minutes for MTV. He also hosted other programs, MTV Live and Pinfield Suite. And after leaving MTV in '99, continued to work in the music industry, taking on various roles. He joined Columbia Records as VP of A&R and played a significant role in discovering and nurturing new talent. His tenure at Columbia was marked by his hands-on approach to working with artists, helping them to refine their sounds and achieve commercial success. He also went on to DJ at stations like the legendary K-Fog in San Francisco and WRXP in New York City, and continued to make television appearances on hosting VH1's VH1 Music Talks and other music-related programs. Matt also wrote a memoir about his life, and he's been open about his struggles with addiction and mental health issues. His candidness about these challenges made him a relatable figure to those who have faced similar struggles. In 2016, he published his memoir, All Things That I've Done, My Insane, Improbable Rock Life. So,
thank you, Scott. It's great. You know, and it's funny now that I'm approaching, you know, I'm like, as we do the show here, I'm like right at 4 years and 4 months sober. So
congratulations.
I figured I'd do a follow-up book, or at least start writing one at 5 years, because I made a promise to a friend of mine that I would do so. And because your perspective on life changes quite a bit. And
of course,
you know, I was hit by a car and nearly killed in 2018 on the streets of LA. Somebody was texting and driving. So I was crossing the street as a pedestrian, lucky to be alive. So I learned, you know, like learn to walk again and all that. But, you know, I'm doing great. And I'm grateful to be here and get to hang out with you. You know what I mean? I got to come for you know, the Book of Bad Decisions at Book Soup signing event that you did, which was really
so great.
Cool. And, you know, you were awesome. And we started talking about The Who. We started talking about a lot of things that we were into, which was really cool.
Yeah, I knew we never have a shortage of topics to talk about.
Oh, absolutely not, man. And I love that.
But I want everybody to know that despite us probably having 2,000 friends in common, we really just met less than a year ago. I was doing there's two organizations I will never say no to, and that's any charity or anything military. So I was donating my photography services to the Ed Asner Charity Foundation, who I've worked with for years, the autism charity. And it was a music show with Ringo Starr and the Toto guys, and who else was there? Joe Bonamassa.
And the STP guys. And
STP guys and Colin Hay.
Colin Hay from Men at Work. Who's great.
Yeah, and then Kara came up to me and she was like, "Will you take a picture of me and my boyfriend?" I was like, "Yeah, do I know him?" And she's like, "Matt Pinfield, do you know him?" And I was like, "I know who he is, but I don't know him." And you guys were awesome and lovely, and then we've run into each other since, and I'm just really glad we met.
I'm really glad we met. It was such kindred spirits, and we talked after your event, which was just so cool. I knew that like immediately we were going to become fast friends because of our passion for all things music, you know, and not just that, but, you know, obviously film, TV, you know, books, just you know what I mean? Just things that we're passionate about. So
yeah. You know, and then I ran into you again at one night I was having dinner with a group of friends and I noticed Kara first. I didn't have my glasses on, but she's very even in soft focus, easy to read. So I went over to say hi to you guys. And then Pete Katz just goes, "How do you guys know each other?" And then you guys were like, "How do you know Peter?" I'm like, "I've known Peter since I'm 21 years old. We were both like club promoter kids in Chicago."
Which is amazing to me because Peter's stories are incredible. So I'm sure yours, I know, are you guys have some amazing stuff to tell.
We were in the same turf. Like I managed a few artists. He managed some of my dearest friends to this day, Material Issue.
Who I loved. That was losing Jimmy was just an incredible thing. And I gotta say that summer was such a horrible summer for me because first, my best friend from college committed suicide, and then Jimmy did, and then Chris from Lush. All these guys who you just would have never guessed. I would have got with Chris, who was just always so upbeat too. So it was a really weird and hard summer of '96. I was just trying to make sense of it, but I'm glad we had great times with Material Issue, and you love us. He had that car, which unfortunately I think might have been the one that he started in the garage when he died. But he had that it was like a Fiat or something his uncle had given him, Jimmy Ellison. And it loaded cassettes from the front, like instead of like the side when you stick them in. That was the thing I remember of him driving me around Chicago. It was one of
he had exquisite taste. He had the Volvo 1600 like Roger Moore had in The Saint.
So that's what it was. It wasn't a Fiat. That's what it was. That was
he had that, but he also had an Avanti. Remember those? The fiberglass car with the Corvette engine. But also his guitar collection. He was the first person I ever saw that had a Rickenbacker light show. The one with the clear top and the Christmas lights in it, in the Gretsch Silverjet. And I'm like, this guy may not be rich, but boy, does he have taste.
Yeah, he does. And he was such a great dude. That documentary was, we went to see it when it played here in town. And
I saw you there, but we didn't know each other yet, but I saw you were there with Peter. And I was like, who's that guy with Peter? And Melissa just said, "Oh, that's Pinfield." Yeah. And I was like, oh, right. But yeah, I was with Teddy and Mike.
Yeah, I love those guys. And, but after Jimmy passed away, when they put out that final album of demos on Ryko, I wrote liner notes for it, which was they'd asked me to do. And I love that band. They were like was such an incredible power pop band. The International Pop Overthrow is like that record is unbelievable.
And you know what? They hold up.
Killers covered Very First Lie. Which is
I saw that. But they hold, not everybody I loved from childhood holds up. Like I went back, and I know it's going to be controversial. I'm going to get hate mail for this. But I went back and listened to the whole Frank Zappa discography, and I was like, why did I love this so much when I was in junior high? And it didn't hold up for me. But I listened to every Material Issue record, and I'm like, these are all time agnostic. Like I think they would be hits today.
You know what I loved and I thought should have been bigger was a cover of Kim the Waitress. I thought that was so great,
Yeah.
And plus, any band that was doing Thin Lizzy Cowboy Song, I was a fan of too, because I love Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, they were just Thin Lizzy Sweet. They were doing like stuff that people were not really doing. And then when Mikey called me one morning, he's like, "We're getting Rick Nielsen to play on Going Through Your Purse." And I'm like, "How'd you do that?" And they're like, "We just asked him." And he said, "Yeah." And it's like that. Do you remember that song, Going Through Your Purse?
Oh, yeah, of course. I love that. Yeah.
Such a monster.
I'm a Cheap Trick fan too. So like, having it was crazy I saw Cheap Trick, the In Color tour. They were opening for UFO and Rush, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Cool. And it was Cheap Trick in Color, as I said. And then UFO Lights Out and Rush Farewell to the Kings. I mean, it's just, go to shows and you've been a ton of shows as well. And, there's certain shows in your life.
My first love.
I just going to shows, right? Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I always loved records, and I want to get into this in a minute, but to me, the spectacle of the rock show is what blew my mind as a child. And I want to ask you, what was your first concert? Not counting parents' concerts.
Yeah. So not counting parents' concerts. There were two in succession. So the parents' concert was Don McLean at Princeton University Gym, because I grew up in New Jersey, in central New Jersey.
Yeah.
And Don McLean, as much as I loved American Pie, it was a really boring concert. And it's like, plus I don't really want to be with my parents. I mean, no disrespect to him, but then I went with my brother to see Jethro Tull, the War Child tour, which
so
was
amazing. That was one of my first, but go on.
yeah, it was great. Actually, it was incredible. And we were in the nosebleeds, but just to be anywhere in a room with rock and roll at that period of time, mid 70s. And then the next show was just the mind blowing. Queen at the Beacon Theater for Night at the Opera was just one of the greatest things I'd ever seen. I mean, here I am. I'm like a 13-year-old, 12-year-old kid, and we're at 76, and I had heard Killer Queen, so I'd gotten Sheer Heart Attack.
That was my favorite. That was my first album
Queen.
too. Was Sheer Heart Attack.
Yeah, I just love, and I still love that record. I played She Makes Me for Carrie the other day, and I played it on my show here in LA. Besides KLOS, I'm on 88.5, where Nick Harcourt is and Julie
Sure.
there. So I do afternoons there. So I will load in songs. So I put in She Makes Me, Stormtrooper and Stilettos for Brian May's birthday. And Kara fell in love with that. But that album, Sheer Heart Attack, is amazing start to finish. Like, I just love Brighton Rock all the way to In the Lap of the Gods, the reprise. It's just this.
Wait, I'm in love with my car. Is that on that one?
No, that's the next one. That's Not at the Opera, but that's a great record
right.
too. That's the tour I saw though. So I saw that tour where they did Death on Two Legs, and oh my God, that record too. Those two albums are two of my favorites.
I can never make people understand, because the problem with most bands is there's really generally one really talented person. But then you look at a band like Queen, where the drummer, what's his name?
Roger Taylor, yeah.
Roger Taylor was as good of a singer as almost all lead singers ever in rock and roll. Like, everybody was a monster talent.
Yeah, because he could hit those high notes. That was what a lot of the stuff he did on Bohemian Rhapsody, of course. And Brian May could sing great too. The only guy who didn't sing in the band was John Deacon, but he could still play and write, Yeah,
but that's the problem when you have too many egos. It seldom works, but when it does, boy, is it something. So let me tell you my first concert. So my first parents' concerts were Barry Manilow, which was in its own way, entertaining.
Yeah.
But then
Could It Be Magic is actually great too.
Yeah, but then Kiss 1977 Alive 2 tour.
Fantastic.
Followed by, in the Chicago Stadium, the old Madhouse on Madison, followed by Queen News of the World tour.
Oh, one of the greatest albums too.
And to everybody who asked, they're like, "What's the best concert you've ever been to?" And I said Queen, and they're like, "What's the second best?" And I'm like, "Second time I saw Queen."
It's amazing you said it, because I went a year later with Thin Lizzy opening for Queen at the Garden. And it was, and they were amazing, but it was still Beacon to the Garden, like you're spoiled, you're a kid, you're in a theater, then you're at the Garden, but it was still amazing. But News of the World, I love that record too. So that must have been incredible. And I love Kiss Alive too. That was a great tour. I'm a big fan of
the spectacle of all spectacles, those plumes of fire and the hydraulic lifts. And to 12-year-old me, I was like, oh my God, my dad was a lighting distributor. So he sold all the light bulbs to the Chicago Stadium. So he knew like the union electricians. So they hooked us up with backstage passes. And my dad could not have been less impressed with this whole thing. So one day we're at his old working class Italian barber shop in downtown Chicago. You guys got the big, hairy Burt Reynolds chest with the gold chains and the Italian horn. And my dad says to Phil the barber, he goes, Phil, I think my son's a fruitcake. I think he's one of them funny boys. And Phil goes, oh, really? Why? And I'm like, I'm sitting right here, you guys. And he goes, first he makes me to take him to this rock show. And a bunch of guys wearing makeup and high heels. What were they called, Scott? I'm like, Kiss. He goes, yeah, bunch of fairies. And then he takes me to this guy. He's got like a leotard and a cane and a mustache. What were they called? And I'm like, Queen, Dad. He goes, yeah, I think my son's a little light in the loafers. And I didn't even know what gay or queer or anything meant then. I just thought this was like rock and roll. And when you think about it, like, I didn't know Judas Priest that Rob Halford was gay, when really he was wearing the quintessential gay billboard.
He was. It's amazing, and you're thinking about
cared.
Yeah, nobody cared. Although when you see heavy metal parking lot, right, you think, how would those guys feel? But nobody cares. So, Rob's the greatest. I saw, I got to tell you, the Kiss story you'll appreciate, because obviously, you know, I went to work not just to be on the air at MTV, but I was in manager music programming, which meant I was one of 10 people that picked the videos, worked on the specials, worked on the unplugged, worked on everything. And it was beautiful. It was a great opportunity at that time because, you know, MTV was still like creating and moving pop culture in the 90s. So Alex Coletti, who's a guy who directed all the unplugs, walks into my office and goes, "Hey, Matt, what's going on with your department, man? They don't think Kiss is worthy of an unplugged." I'm like, "Really? Well, let's go talk to them and see." And I go, so we go into the office with a couple of my bosses, and I go, "I hear you guys don't think Kiss is worthy of an unplugged." And they go, "Does anyone care?" I'm like, "About 500,000 people care every time they release a record because without promotion or anything, they go gold." And I said, "Well, you know, in just numbers terms, if that's 500,000 households, in you know, that's a great number for cable." You know, I put it in that kind of terms, and then I thought about it, and they agreed to do it. I was there for a lot of it, and it was just a beautiful thing. So then Gene and Ace, they were managed by Lieber and Krebs, the guys who managed Aerosmith for a while in the 70s.
Sure.
I saw their names on the albums, you know, when you were a kid growing up. And they took me and Alex out to lunch to thank us, you know, and I had all these questions for them, like, "I love Hotter Than Hell, but why does it sound like, you know, like so muddy and like I like it's grungy, it's cool, but it sounded like an air conditioner got turned on." Gene and Paul look at me and go, "Oh man, we didn't know what we were doing. You know, we were touring all the time. We come back, we do it." I love that record. I love them all, but the early ones. But the beauty was after helping them with the unplugged thing, I got to narrate this documentary of theirs called The Second Coming after they got back together and did a tour. So Gene hired me to do that. And it's a pretty funny story because you'll appreciate this, Scott. It was like, you know, I haggle with Gene about, you know, what it's going to cost to do it. You know what I mean? Because, you know, but he was like, great. And, but then when I get the tapes and the script, I'm like, oh, wait, they want me to put that to video? Holy shit. I'm going to have to rent a studio. That's everything I would get paid for this, as much as I want to be a part of their history. You know, I don't want to work for free. So, yeah. I mean, I do charity work for free like you do all the time. So that's different.
Yeah.
But anyway, it worked out. I narrated the thing. I did it in the MTV, you know, vocal booth when it wasn't like a TRL show or 120 minutes or Matt Rock, which used to be Headbangers Ball, you know, all that. And so what's wild is I not all the lines matched up because I wasn't really doing it to picture because I didn't have the time. So they'd write back to me and go, or call me and go, "Hey, those 4 lines we're sending you again. You got to narrate. You got to do it again." And I'm like, I wonder how that happened because I didn't do it to picture. I did not link it up. I just winged it. But the greatest part, and you'll appreciate this, is as an early Kiss fan, you know, they wanted to thank me for doing the voiceover and have me come to Kiss headquarters while the VMAs were on this one year, like 97. Maybe that was the year that Ben Stiller was doing like the imitations of me with like the prosthetic makeup. And it was surreal in many ways. But I went over there and Tommy Thayer goes, "Gene wants to take you to lunch to thank you for doing this." And then he goes at the end of lunch, "Hey man, we're rehearsing at Cole's. Do you want to come hang out and watch us rehearse for the Psycho Circus tour?" I'm like, yeah. I mean, I was out here by myself and I was just like, I'd love to.
Of course.
Long story short, Scott, I get there and Paul doesn't show up for a long time, but the boots come from Love Gun and Gene has me get in them. I'm a short dude, you know, like, so he's like, they're like, you know, like superhero monsters over a shirt.
Yeah.
And so he makes me put them on and I buckle my like ankle. He goes, "Imagine walking around in those 2.5 hours a night." So then he showed me.
People.
Yeah. It's so Paul doesn't show. This is the interesting thing that happens. You'll appreciate.
All right.
I'm looking at this set list and there's only 2 new songs. The rest are all the classics from, you know, that you would know from Kiss Alive 1 and 2 and all the studio albums.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh man, it looks good. There's only 2 new songs. I love this set." He goes, "You like the list?" Huh? I go, "Yeah, I used to sing these songs in my band when I was, 14, 15. He goes, "You want to have a go?" So I basically said, "Yeah, you guys know Coming Home?" And then Ace Frehley goes, "I don't remember it. What else do you want to do?" And then Gene whispers to my ear, "I remember it." And he wrote it with Paul. And then, so eventually we did Rock Bottom. I sang Rock Bottom with them. They looked at me and went, we can't believe how you can sing and have control of your voice. What else do you want to do? So then Peter Criss yelled out, "Do You Love Me?" I sang "Do You Love Me" with Peter. and Gene singing backup. I sang
That's
100
amazing.
years. So I performed 3 songs with Kiss, and it was unbelievable because
I
you
didn't
know,
know you were a singer.
yeah, if you go online, you can find some cool stuff. Like there's me doing Fairy Tale of New York by the Pogues, like literally into the microphone on the radio on my morning show with an Irish band. There's also me doing Ace of Spades with like all the punk rock guys. Like we did it during the pandemic, like Greg Hetson from Bad Religion, Circle Jerks, and Darren from Goldfinger, and Stan from the Dickies, and Randy from Pennywise. And it's me singing Ace of Spades. And Motorhead put it up on their site. And if you messed up a song of Lemmy's, you'd get crucified by Motorhead fans. So people seem to like it, So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, man, that's what I do. I've been very blessed to.
Yes, you have
some fun. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So I had a cousin named Mona Kligman, and she was one of the first 4 or 5 people hired at MTV Conowitch, right?
Yeah.
And I was out for New Music Seminar. I want to say it was 89, 90, 91, somewhere in there. And I got to see a showcase with Nirvana, which was really something. And then I got together with lunch with her, and she goes, "Do you want to come to MTV?" And it's like MTV was like the Vatican for music people like me. And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Let's go by the studio." And we go in the studio, and it's the brick wall and the neon sign. And I sit down on a bar stool, and I watched like Adam Curry's set or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had hair as long as his back then. And Mona's like, "I got to get back to the office. You want to get out of here?" I said, "No, I don't ever want to leave. Do you mind if I stay here and just watch?" I must have stayed there for 8 hours, just sitting on this bar stool, transfixed. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Of course, I didn't have the stones to ask anyone. And I was also 21 years old, 22 years old. But yeah, that was the dream.
That's great, though, that you got to spend the time there. And also seeing everyone at NMS, New Music Seminar, because those were like, I used to go to those, like, it was funny how before, like a lot of those conferences, sometimes they get too big and then they implode, but there were some great ones over the years there. And, you'd walk into a hotel room at like where the things taking place. And I remember there'd be Kurt Smith from Tears for Fears and Andrew Eldridge from Sisters of Mercy. Like before those records, people really, you know what I mean? They just released a couple singles. And that was a crazy time. So, I enjoyed it.
I went to Spodiotes, and it's like Tina Turner's doing shots with Keith Richards. And I'm like, what? This is sorcery.
Yeah. You've seen some incredible stuff, which I love,
Not as much as you, but we're both, we could do this a lot. So let me ask you this. What was the first album you bought with your own money?
The first album that I bought with my own money that really I remember well is Diamond Dogs by Bowie. And I'll tell you why.
Good choice. Yeah.
Because, like I would, when I talked about like when I was really, there were things also that I got for like the holidays, I really was taught by my mother and father that, man, if you want to get records, you're gonna have to mow lawns, deliver papers, watch people's animals, do whatever you got to do. And that's what I did. I was, obviously Quadrophenia was one of my most important records when I was a kid. That's probably
still is for me.
Well, to this day, one of the greatest, most important records of my lifetime. I really related.
Actual masterpiece.
Yeah, it is, So I love Diamond Dogs, and then that made me reach back into other Bowie stuff. But I love The Who, and it was I had Who's Next, but Quadrophenia was the album that and then of course, it just connected with me in such
a seminal. Yeah, my youth, all of it.
I still think it's one of the greatest records ever recorded.
Did you ever interview Jeff Stein?
I did not, no.
Okay, so I've known Jeff for probably 8 years. And I met him on the Red Studios lot because he keeps an office there. And I'd go into his office and we'd shoot the shit. And he had a lot of, Jim Marshall photos and Niels Lozauer photos. But everybody in LA has a bunch of framed classic rock photos, where their decor is like the whiskey bar at the Sunset Marquee. So, and then he had this glass case that had a smashed to bits Gibson SG with the broken neck still attached to the body. And I go, "Who's that from?" And he goes, "Oh, Pete Townsend." And it never came up again, but we stayed in touch. We stayed friends. And then one day I'm watching these remastered 4K transfers of the songs from The Kids Are All Right. So Baba O'Reilly, Won't Get Fooled Again. There's a third. I can't think of it. Oh, Who Are You?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, God, these look amazing. They look like they were shot yesterday in 8K. And then I start taking a deeper dive into it, and I see an interview with Jeff, and he was the director of this movie. So I call him and I'm like, why didn't you tell me you directed The Kids Are All Right? He goes, you never asked. And I go, you're not that much older than me, dude. How old were you when you directed that movie? He goes, 18. I go, how the hell did you convince the Who, the biggest bands in the history, to let an 18-year-old kid direct a documentary? He goes, I was so stupid, I didn't know it was impossible.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah. So he says, so then Pete calls me and he goes, look, I know you love our band, but I want to tell you something, Jeff. We are not nice people. He goes, you will not like us at the end of this if we agree to do this with you. And he goes, I don't care. That's how much I love the Who. And so an 18-year-old Jeff Stein, running 3 Panaflex cameras, which are not cheap, did this Shepperton Studios. He started with the reel of all the archive footage, which was there was no YouTube back then. He had to call 1,000 TV and radio stations to wrangle all that footage. But what an interesting guy and what an interesting conversation. Maybe I'll get him on here.
It's so great. And you were talking about him there. Was he at the event at Book Soup?
He was not.
No, but we talked about it, you and I, there, because, I saw Quadrophenia and Kids Are Right in the theater, because, I mean, if it was the Who, I was going.
I saw Kids Are All Right in the theater, not Quadrophenia.
Yeah, but I think that's so great that he was 18. That story is amazing to me. I love
incredible.
That. It just
blows when I was on 18, I was grateful for the privilege of answering someone's phone
exactly
at a third-rate management company in Chicago.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that's like to be able to do that at that period of time, like you said, with Panaflex cameras. I just would love to know the story about how he pulled that all together, But I love the way it was, the whole way that
have him on your show. I'll introduce you guys.
Yeah, I have to do that. And we have to
so what my first record, which I'm quite proud of, was Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, great record.
And being a double, that was an expensive one for a 12-year-old kid. That was like 2 weeks allowance.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely was.
Yeah, so cut to about 4 years ago, I'm at Swingers Diner, on Beverly.
Yeah.
And, you live in LA long enough, you see everyone. I've never seen Stevie Wonder just out and about. So I notice I'm in this booth off to the left when you walk in, and I notice just off my left shoulder, there's a back of a head, and it's a black guy with cornrows. And I'm with my friend who's this like Brazilian model with a French Canadian accent. And we're talking, and all of a sudden, 20 minutes into brunch, this guy turns around. He goes, where you from with that pretty accent? And she goes, oh, I was born in Brazil and raised in Montreal. And he goes, what's your name? And she goes, Amelia. And he goes, wait, hold on a minute. And he feels his way up out of the table. Stevie Wonder stands at our table and sings an entire 2.5-minute song in Portuguese called Amelia.
Wow, that's
and we're freaking out.
That's
and
like
then
the most incredible thing to be serenaded by Stevie in Swingers.
In Swingers. And then he goes, where are you from, young man? And I said, Chicago. He goes, Chicago, Chicago. I love Chicago. I go, Stevie, your record was the first record I bought with my own money. He goes, oh, which one? I said, Songs in the Key of Life. He goes, it's a good one. I'm like, a good one is the best one. Yeah. So he goes, you guys want to take a picture with me? And I go, yeah. He goes, $25 each. No, I'm just fucking with you. Let's do it.
That's great. That's so cool. Well, yeah, man. I love that you did, because, I met Stevie at the MTV Video Music Awards, and it was a little different. It was the day he was doing like the thing with the Wild Wild West thing with Will Smith. They were,
yeah.
And, I wanted to say hi to him and thank him for Intervisions is like one of my favorite records. I love, that record's unbelievable, all the way through. It was, a big one. My older brother had, so, I had a brother that was 10 years older. A sister was 6 years older. So there was always, and then my brother's first
Talking Book.
Yeah. That run.
In the early Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
I love all those. Yeah. I mean, those singles,
which I think, which was the one, was it For Once in My Life? I think it was, that his like mother wrote the lyrics for.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I do love that. And you know what? It was weird. Like songs would be hits here or in the UK that, you know, it was the Motown was weird because some things crossed over. But if you look at UK charts from back then, and the B side of My Sharia Moore, which was a minor hit in the US called I Don't Know Why I Love You, which the Stones covered, and it's unbelievable. Like this song, it's like I rediscovered it. I'm going, because he's just getting his voice is getting, it's like he's getting more worked up as he sings it with this unbelievable passion. And the
And
lyrics,
I was made to love her. Yeah.
oh, it's one of my favorites. And
Yeah,
if you
like what's
really
that? What's
love
that
me-
lyric? Like a sweet magnolia tree, our love blossom tenderly.
Yeah,
And you got James Jamerson, who like nobody knows who he is except you know, real musos like us. But like James Jamerson is, I could make a case for he's the most important bass player ever.
one of the, oh, he is certainly. I mean, you know, he's definitely on that list of the best because think of all those records that he played on and just that absolute groove that, as you know, just I love those records to this day, all of those. And the fact that it was done in that house, you know what I mean? Like
I know. And it's just like, and I saw you at Geezer Butler, who I'm a massive fan of on your show. And you know, I'm an old friend of Jack's, but I've never met the rest of the band. And I'm always trying to explain to people the importance of Geezer Butler. And I'm just like, yeah, it's like it gets overshadowed because Tony, which is also a god, and Ozzy's as good a singer as there's ever been. But
yes,
Geezer plays like I hear Motown in him. And I used to, you know, when I first heard it, I thought it was so hard. It sounded like what I would imagine Iron Maiden sounds like to my parents. It sounded just like too much. And now I
yeah,
go back and listen to Sabbath, and it's kind of like psychedelic, very psychedelic.
it was. I mean, and that's where their heads are at. I mean, you saw that interview. I love when I go, I learned what the word paranoid meant as a young kid from Black Sabbath. And he said, so did the rest of the band when I wrote the lyrics. They didn't know what the word meant, but it's amazing. But he said, well, yeah, he goes, I guess deeply rooted, it was the paranoia from smoking too much weed. So there was always some kind of drug reference. But man, those guys, I love. Those records are incredible. And I love
Sweet Leaf, Snowblind. It's
yeah.
funny. Jack took me to the End show at Hollywood Bowl, and he hooked me up with this nice box kind of in front of the mixing desk, but in the front row. And I just turned into 13-year-old me. Like I've been to probably 2,000 arena and stadium level shows, so I walk in everything like this. I've seen it, I've done it. And as soon as they came on and opened with Black Sabbath. 13-year-old Scott Nathan came out, and I got my fists in the air and I'm banging my head the whole show. So at one point, someone blocks my vision to the stage, and I look up like, get out of the way. And it's Jack and his daughter Pearl, who's got the earmuffs on, the hearing protectors. And he goes, really, dude, with the headbanging? I was like, get out of the way. Prince of Darkness.
That's it. It is. You know, those records will bring you right back to the feeling that you have. And, you know, Sabbath records are great. I mean, you know, I love those things. Like we love The Who, or, I mean, there's just so many. I mean, the thing about us,
And
I'm sure.
and you love all music like I do. I love all music that's good. Like people like, you don't like jazz, do you? And I'm like, I saw Miles Davis live. Yeah, I love jazz. I just don't like bad jazz. And
Yes.
people are like, oh, do you like country? And I'm like, yeah, I love Hank Sr. I love Lefty Frizzell. I love Dolly. I love Willie. I love Waylon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love George Jones. But do I like Bass Pro contemporary country? Not really. No.
You know, speaking of Bass Pro, I saw a shirt that I got because I was laughing about it. It's got the Bass Pro Shop fish, and it just says "Life is Pain." And I thought that was a pretty classic shirt, but I was laughing because you see those everywhere now. Bass Pro is
I know it's like a fashion statement now.
It's pretty funny that I just laugh about that. That's why I wanted something that was kind of defacing it.
I like the grading of Bass Pro because they all want to boost everyone's self-esteem. So this Yes shirt is an extra large. When I go to at Bass Pro, I'm a small.
Oh, of course you are.
Because they grade everything for big people who would like got mountain who drink like a 2-liter of Mountain Dew every day and eat Whataburgers.
Yeah. And Whataburgers is the high part of the diet.
Yeah.
Hey, I've eaten Whataburgers certainly in Austin, Texas. You know what I mean?
I love Whataburger. I love their gravy fries.
I love them. I got to be honest with you. Hey, they get the condiments. You know, they have the tray. It's all good. You know, and the burgers are great.
But Austin, my first love is Franklin's Barbecue. You ever have their brisket?
There's a picture of Karen and I at Franklin's over on the wall there. Also, your picture that you took, Scott, is on the wall. So,
Oh, really?
yeah,
I love that picture, you
and it's
guys.
right by, and the Franklin's picture is 2 under it, but like it's like, yeah, it's we went to Franklin's and we just had a great time. They treated us really nicely, and you know, I love the fact again that you love music, all kinds of music, and you're not afraid to. I'm like you. I don't have. They say guilty pleasures. I'm like, I don't feel guilty about anything I like.
Anything. Like people like you like ABBA, and I'm like, no, I love ABBA.
Yes, yeah. I mean, God, I would. You know, I love when I was younger. I didn't have as much the confidence as a kid because I was singing in the like band at the junior high dances, doing Bowie, Bad Company, Aerosmith, BTO, all that stuff at that time.
Sure.
It was pre-punk, but I loved everything. I listened to everything. But man, I brought home. I of course
I
bought
love great
Waterloo.
disco. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. I bought the 7-inch of Waterloo, which was like rocking. But then I brought home SOS, which was my favorite, and I like remember blasting SOS. Yeah, and just going.
The changes in SOS are so sublime. I did that's
the beauty of that song, man. Like
on Instagram a year or two ago, just for fun, one night, I plugged my Les Paul into my Marshall and I did a metal version of SOS, just instrumental. I was like, and it still just holds up because it's so important.
It's a perfect song. It's incredible, and I love.
But I'll go back and listen to 12-inch Donna Summer records with like Keith Forsey holding it down on drums and Giorgio Moroder, and I'm like, these are so thick.
That I love. That I feel love. 12-inch is like one of the best 12 inches of all time. I mean, you cannot.
But imagine that wasn't programmed. That was Forsey from Billy Idol's partner, holding down those grooves for an entire 20 minutes? Yeah, that's not easy.
That 12-inch version of I Feel Love is like one of the greatest things ever.
And those gurgling analog synths are just like so lush.
They sound great. There's a lot of, and I loved a lot of the synth music from that era too. Like when it moved into when I was in high school, this is a funny story. I was with my high school girlfriend and we had gone to Florida, because we were getting out of Jersey. We wanted to go. So we were like down there visiting my sister, and someone was playing the rock station out the window around the pool of this apartment building. And you're hearing things you would expect, like I obviously was a Leonard Skinner fan, and they were playing my lights right in the middle because I was obviously loved Bowie and loved a lot of things like that. So I was, I was always Bowie opened my mind to a lot of music when I was younger, and that changed everything. But I got to tell him that, which was sitting on a couch across from him in his place, which was unbelievable for me. But I gotta say, this you'll appreciate this. So a Skinner song or a Molly Hatchet song is on, and then all of a sudden, and I'm out by the pool, we're like 17, drinking beers, because we can in Florida, because nobody cards you, But anyway,
sure.
Next thing I know, I hear this electronic sound coming through and it was Gary Newman and Two Bay Army, Our Friends Electric. And I heard that song and I went, what the fuck is this? This is amazing. It blew my mind so much that I literally, all the way back to New Jersey, I was like, I got to find that record. What is that? Who is it? And I walked into a record store in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I said, I'm looking for this guy named Newman Army something. They go, oh, Gary Newman and Two Bay Army, he has an album, Replicas. And I bought the record. It had Down in the Park on it, which has been covered by Foo Fighters and Manson and, like so many people have done their stuff. And Our Friends Electric's been covered by Weezer, Hole, The Dead Weather. People have, it was such an important record because it went to number one in the UK and nothing sounded like that ever before that, And then he went in a very synth direction. He started like as a punk, band. He was like doing like futuristic sci-fi punk, signed to Beggar's Banquet, this record label. And then he found, the story's crazy, Scott. Gary Newman found a mini Moog in the corner of a studio someone had left when they were going to make their record. And he just went and turned it on and heard, whoa, 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 whoa. And he was decided to use it. And I thought it really changed a lot of things. in the UK, and he finally gets a credit for it that he deserves, and got it from Trent Reznor and so many people. But man, that was another one of those moments in life, just like when I heard Just What I Needed on the radio for the first time. There's like when I heard the Cars, I was driving down the highway. I'm a teenager. I'm like, what is this? Like, I'm sure you had those experiences with so many records over the years.
It's funny. I was just about to ask you about one in particular, but go on.
And you were talking about Iron Maiden, and I love the fact that you're a fan. And one time, and I'm sure you met up with Bruce Dickinson, but I got him to tell me the story of how he got Patrick McGowan to agree to let him use The Prisoner in the beginning of the song on the Number of the Beast. And he told me a story about his manager. They were all nervous calling Patrick McGowan. I wasn't aware Patrick McGowan lived in like Malibu. I thought he was like, because he's Irish, English. He goes, no, he lived there for a long time. He directed some episodes of Columbo, and he was in Scanners and Escape from Alcatraz. But he was imitating, Patrick McGowan's character, like The Prisoner.
Yeah, I've never met Maiden, but again, spectacle. Like, I think the first tour I saw was seventh tour of a seventh tour, Power Slave, whatever. But I was just like, these guys know how to do spectacle, but they can also play.
Yeah.
And at first I was just like, I saw their artwork and I was like, I'll go to the concert, but this looks like music for children. And I was like, these guys are the real deal.
Yeah. So yeah, it's amazing. So I know you love us too. Like for me, when I, because of my age, I loved Kiss, Aerosmith,
Same, yeah.
And then, there was then I discovered Roxy Music, but there was also a kid who, I heard like Virginia playing on an FM station. I'm like, this is so weird. It's cool. I got to buy this record. I was always looking for new stuff and new rock, if I saw it in Circus Magazine or Cream, or it looked cool in Rolling Stone and the producer was somebody I knew for another record, I go, I'm going to buy that record. I'd mow enough lawns until I could work illegally under the table, which is what I did. That's how I ended up buying the punk, I got the Ramones' first album in 1976. It was on my birthday. Same thing. It was a month after, the album came out. And I just walked into the record store that my sister-in-law worked at in a department store and said, I got to find something new. It's my birthday. What do you got? She goes, this is supposed to be pretty good. And she holds up the Ramones album. And I look at it and go, what the fuck? Who are these guys? Like the four dudes. And then I turned it over and went, 14 songs. Holy shit. So I bought it and brought it home. And it was the first very polarizing, divisive record among my friends. Some friends loved it. Some friends hated it.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing. And same with the Dolls' first record. But also, when I heard about the Pistols, it was unbelievable because I heard about it, of all things, from my mother. My mother said she heard some report of a band from England who were abusing journalists. And I think it was because Steve Jones had cursed on, that Bill Grundy show. And I'm like,
yeah.
If it's offending people, I've got to find it. So I literally...
Yeah, same thing happened to me. Like, my parents told me there were only two records I was not allowed to buy. Richard Pryor's Wanted, random.
Yeah, great.
And Nevermind the Bollocks, which I ended up buying on cassette in London on a family trip. So I told Jonesy this story because he and I used to hang out every day. We would hike Runyon Canyon every morning. And we were motorcycle friends. And I told him this story. He goes, why? And then I would say random things to him. I said, do you ever think about the fact that the Queen of England not only knows who you are, but hates your guts? He goes, no, it never crosses my mind, but that's pretty good. and he's a very funny guy. And then I called him during the opening ceremonies of the London Olympics. And I said, are you watching this? And he goes, watching what, mate? And I said, are you watching the Olympics? They're playing, I think it was Anarchy in the UK or God Save the Queen. I forget which one. I think it was God Save the Queen. And he goes, and he's giggling with that Jonesy laugh. He's like, And I go, how many meetings do you think they had? Has anybody read the lyrics that says, God save the Queen? She ain't no human being. England's got no future, no future, no future for you. And Jonesy was dying laughing. Speaking of Jonesy and Bowie, have you ever heard his cover of Lady Stardust?
Yeah, it's really cool. And I used to do.
He really made it his own.
Yeah, I love the story of him way before the book came out. His great book, and of course the the mini series about him. But I always loved that story. I got him to tell it on the radio when I was on the radio in New York or on TV about, sneaking into the Hammersmith Odeon that night of the last Bowie show with Mick Ronson and those guys, and Woody Woodmansey and Trevor Bolder, and like the fact that he hid in the closet and then stole microphones and all that other stuff is the greatest ever.
He stole the microphone, and then he told me he went back and like the next day and stole Mick Ronson's guitar, the White Les Paul. And he said, and I was like, he goes, but I needed an amp. And I was like, where'd you get that from? Because I went back 3 weeks later in the Hammersmith Odeon and I stole Bob Marley's deluxe reverb.
Which is the greatest thing ever. I mean, it's just like, look, he was a poor kid. I just think the story is legendary. And he told me he's trying to give Bowie the money back for that. But he's like, don't worry about it. He said that was pretty funny. But I remember bringing that up. I was doing some interview stuff at South by Southwest. They had like a deal with DirecTV. So I was doing like anchoring like these 8-hour broadcasts. They did it for like 3 years. And Jonesy and I are sitting outside and I go, so you're touring again, Filthy Lucre Live. I go, guys going to do some new music together? And he just looks at me and goes, nobody wants to hear fucking new music from us. They just want to hear the bollocks. But I loved it, man. Like he did You Know Wrong, that great B-side of God Save the Queen, which, when we were kids, you listen to both sides of every single. I mean, you did. You just.
Sure. You don't have that much content.
You don't. And so I always loved that B-side. And it's great you guys used to hike in the canyon there. He's such a great, I love him, man,
Yeah, we rode motorcycles, a whole group of us for, like at least once a week, like these big, long road trips and had a great time. It was like me, him, Billy Idol, Billy Morrison, Jack Osborne. It was all a bunch of sober guys and me.
Yeah. Did Billy Duffy ever join you guys when he was around too?
Yeah, for one trip, this Ducati All-Stars trip that was sponsored by Ducati, and Duffy came along on that one, and Frankie Perez, and just a great group of guys. And I remember, like, I'm not in the program, although maybe, who knows, maybe I should be now. We'll talk about that privately, but I'm not much of a drinker. But it was like 110-degree day, and we ended up at the Ojai Valley Inn. And it was hot, and we're eating barbecue. And I was just like, they're going around the table. Everyone's ordering their drinks. There's like 15 of us. And I go, I'll have a Corona. And everybody just stares at me with the death stare at the table. And they're like, we'll save you a chair at the meeting, mate. And I was like, I'm not like you guys. I'm having one beer.
It's funny. It took me a long time to get to the point where I was like ready to throw in the towel. And, and I've been sober now, like I said, 4 years and 4 months, so, and it's cool because what better group of people, to be honest with you, the people, the community for sobriety and for recovery in LA, it's all those people we're talking about. They're the best, And so
you know what I love is that alcohol is going out of style. Like people don't like, because I gave up drinking years ago. Like it just doesn't agree with me anymore. It's not that I have a problem. It's just that I have autoimmune stuff. I'm in pain for 2 days if I even have half a drink. It just makes me feel like shit, so I don't do it anymore. But people don't like it. They're like, come on, have one. I'm like, I don't want one. And they're like, I'll pay for it. And I'm like, no, it's not that. I really just don't want one.
No, I'll pay for it later. Because especially if it's going to cause pain. I learned, like, I don't know, it just clicked for me. And eventually I was like, I'm done because I do, and I'm very serious about, being there to support other people and be of service. But, man, I love music and the things and people like you and I, we have the same kind of passion. That's the thing that drew me to you, Scott, was your just love of music and people and experiences. And that's that's what life's all about. And I did all the craziness already. It's like people say to me, you already did it. What can you do? I mean, like it's
also just not a good look. Old drug addicts is just not great.
Not a good look. Old drug addicts and drunk. That's the number one thing I said. I said, not a good look for a guy my age. Not happening at all.
No, it's just unseemly. It's undignified. It's not classy.
Yeah, and it's really, I'm really happy to be on the other side of it, and I take it very seriously, every day. So,
I know you do.
It gives me the opportunity, though, Scott, like to show up and be there and come to see you do your book event, man, and then just like you and I bond over the Who. and that's a new like. And then I'm like, we got to hang out more. Like I was like, you know, I obviously
And we do.
Kara thought you were awesome, and she knew
I
you
love
wanted-
Kara.
Yeah, she's the best. I mean, she's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. I love her, and so I just and she, you know, so she was like, "That's great. You got to meet him and hang with him." And then once you and I did, and you know, speaking of which, I booked Soup. I went in there. I bought your book, and then I bought like the Quadrophenia, like making of book, and you know, a couple other books that were there, like a Mark Bowman of the Turtles book, like some other things. You know, I like to support, and that's a great store. Really has cool stuff.
Yeah, that was a dream for me to be in Book Soup. And I had this British publicist, and she's like, "What you give a fuck about Book Soup for? I got you in Barnes and Noble at the Grove." And I was like, "Fuck the corporate." I saw Liz Taylor do a signing at Book Soup. I want to be at Book Soup, and she's like, "You're an idiot."
It was a great crowd for you, and it was a great atmosphere. It was really cool, and you know,
Yeah, and
People
Melissa
work with
Rivers is
somebody-
always fun.
What's that?
Melissa Rivers is always fun.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
I really feel she's just like my soul sister.
Yeah, she was awesome with you. I loved seeing her there. And
She's really turned out to be a great friend. You know, I met her and Joan 15 years ago. I was just a random guest on their reality show. And I
Yeah.
was just like, this is the family I was supposed to have. These really funny, sarcastic people.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was adopted by the wrong people, maybe. But one more, I have another music question for you, and I don't want it to sound cynical, but do you think bands are coming back? Because I had Peter Mokrin on a few weeks ago, who's, I don't know if you know him, but he's one of the biggest mixers of hits in the last 30 years. And I said, could you get, if an epic band showed up? He goes, no, I could never get them signed. Unless it's a club banger or hip hop, nobody's signing it. What does the horizon look like in your opinion?
You know, I think there's, you know, I think that's where independent labels come in. I think the majors will sign bands. I mean, I see it happening because, you know, I still stay in a very interesting, you know, through KCSN 85. That is kind of a, like what they call a AAA format, right? So, but I play everything. I mean, you know, I'm one off Quadrophenia the other day, and, you know, and seeing Sand on like Keith's birthday, just so you know what I mean? Like I play a lot of different things on there, which I'm very grateful for. But I think, you know, it's harder and harder for a major, you know, they're looking for things that are already pre-developed. It's different than when I was doing A&R. They would take a chance on somebody if they thought it was a great song or did a great demo, and they, you know, it's a different time than when, you know, had two perfect examples. If Aerosmith had not gotten to Toys in the Attic Would Walk This Way, if Bruce Springsteen hadn't gotten to Born to Run, I mean, like on the third record, you know, people were complaining a few years ago that people weren't getting the opportunity to get to a second album. Now it's like, it's totally different. So I think it's really depends on the independence, strong independence. There's new ways of distribution that are happening, you know, not to, you know, be too technical or boring, but there are some really good people out there that are working. And it really does come down to, it's all about songs at this period of time. But
I think I think it always has been. I think the one
Yes.
thing Phil Spector was right about is the song
Yeah.
is omnipotent. I got an argument last night. Well, I'll call it a lively and spirited debate from
Yeah.
one of the most virtuosic multi-instrumentalists. I'm not going to say his name on here, but you know him. And he was talking about, he was saying that Noel Gallagher plays guitar like an 8th grader. And I said, you listen to me, dude. Just to get this straight, so you
Yeah.
I said, just so you understand, the reason he's had the success you haven't is because nobody cares about chops. Bob Dylan wasn't much of a singer. Jimi Hendrix was not much of a singer. Keith Richards, I could make an argument, is the best guitar player living or dead. Why? Because he has 130 Billboard Hot 100 songs, every one of them around a guitar riff. So like, I don't care. Like, I tried to get Smashing Pumpkins signed to my publishing company, and my boss was like, they can't sing and they can't play. And I go, who cares? They got vibe. And then I played everybody, Katy Perry, everyone in the music business. They all told me to go F myself. I played everybody I knew, Maroon 5, and they were like, the guy's voice is paper thin.
Oh, I know.
Like,
Like when we were Karis Flowers, and then they did that, and it was unbelievable because, yeah, they were wrong about that. And Katy Perry, same deal. You know, she was signed to Columbia through the Matrix. She was going to be the vocalist of the Matrix when she was there through
yeah,
Tim
yeah,
Devine.
and Jelly, you know,
Jelly was the
and
best. By the way, I love Jelly, and I miss her terribly. She's our dear
yeah,
friend.
Katie introduced me to her.
Yeah, and she fought for Katie in the biggest way. She's the one who went to Jason Flum, who ended up signing and having a massive success with her, and going, you've got to listen to her. You got to believe in this. And it's just it's so great. The story. I miss Jelly. She worked on my projects, some bands that I signed to Columbia when I was doing A&R, and I loved her dearly. And she also, when I moved back to LA, she was like, I got to introduce you to some people in recovery. So she was helpful in a big way. She really cared.
Oh, I didn't even know she was sober. And then Chris Anacute was a great guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Who I'm
But
still
I
in
love
touch
you,
with.
Jelly, and because Katie, man, she was like, I'm telling you, and I agreed with her. Absolutely.
I gave her first photo shoot. I believed in her, and it was my first advertising campaign. And this cosmetics CEO was like, "Scott, are you out of your mind? Are you really going to put your balls on the chopping block for an unknown, unsigned singer?" Because she had already been done with Columbia and hadn't gotten signed to Capitol yet. And I said, "Yes, I am." And they're like, "What's her name?" Yeah, and I said her name's Katy Perry.
Right? Alicia Keys.
What?
Alicia Keys was on Columbia, then dropped. A lot of other people. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I called Katie. We always call each other by our last names. And I go, "Hey, Perry." She's like, "Hey, Nathan." I said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" She's like, "I'm writing with Glenn Ballard. Do you know who that is?" I said, "Yeah, I know who he is." I go, "You got to move the meeting." She's like, "Dude, I've been stalking him for a year." "No, I'm not moving the meeting." I go, "How much money do you have right now, Katie?" She goes, "Same as always, zero." I said, "I got a photo shoot, pays $7,500 a day." She goes, "What do I have to do?" I said, "Charm 2 gay guys in a room." And she goes, "That's my jam." I said, "I'll pick you up at 10. We're going down to Newport Beach to get you in a makeup campaign." And that's how I ended up getting Katie in the Too Faced Cosmetics campaign.
That's incredible. And were remember when he put her in, what was that? Rock magazine for a minute. She was like, I forgot what it was called. So this is really bad that I can't remember it. But it was in the 2000s. And this was after you did that. Because it was also after the whole Matrix thing. So it had to be somewhere in that succession. But that's so great that you did that for her. Who was the other person? The Pumpkins? Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so I loved the Pumpkins. They were the house band basically at the Cabaret Chicago.
Cabaret Metro, right? Yeah.
And Joe Shanahan was managing them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even until recently that Joe didn't know that I was championing their effort. And he's like, "You passed on the Pumpkins." I was like, "Hold on a minute, Joe. No, I did not." I said, "Do you remember when I brought all those executives from New York and LA?" He goes, "Yeah, the whole thing went tits up." And I was like, "Here's what happened. I made those guys fly in a snowstorm to see the Pumpkins, and they slayed. And then we all went to Beach A for dinner afterward, and I'm puffing my chest up. I'm like, how great was that?" And this Scottish music executive, I'm sure you know, but I won't embarrass him now. And he's like, "They can't fucking sing and they can't fucking play. They're fucking terrible. We should fire you for making us fly in this shit weather." And I was like, "You guys, are you serious?" They go, "You think that's good?" I go, "No, I think that's great." And then cut to some years later, it was Halloween. I was living here now. Halloween, Dodger Stadium. Pumpkins dressed as the 1964 Beatles opening for Kiss at Dodger Stadium. Do you remember this?
Yes.
They came out with the mop top wigs and the Pierre Cardin suits and the Ringo kit that said the Beatles on it, banging their heads playing Pumpkin songs. So I decided to call this old boss of mine, see if his cell phone was still the same. And he's like, "Hello?" I said, "Kenny?" He goes, "Who's that?" I go, "It's Scott Nathan." He goes, "Are you at Kiss and the Smashing Pumpkins at Dodger Stadium?" And I said, "Yes, I'm glad you remember this." He goes, "Can't be right every time, but you were right."
That is so
And
great.
I like that he copped to it, because most people would be like, that never happened. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I love when people are honest about that kind of thing. But
Yeah, because I passed on artists like in my very brief stint at Atlantic. Someone gave me a Counting Crows demo, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to be married to this for 2 years."
Yeah, no, I understand. Everybody has
Doesn't
one
ma-
of those stories, you know that too, and everybody has
yeah,
one. You know, they wanted to sign, but it could the planets didn't align, right? You know, I mean,
that's right. And
perfectly the Killers for me because, you know, I wanted to sign them, but Leor and Rob Stevenson were smart, and the night they were going to come meet the next morning with Will Botwin and Donnie Ienner, they they had a dinner with like Beyonce and John Mayer that night or some charity dinner, and they were like, "Well, we'll meet with them tomorrow." And I got the call the next morning. Hey, madam, sorry, man, do we love you? But we signed with Island Def Jam. So, you know, but hey, that happens. We go through that. At least I got a great song out of it, you know. I don't
and
know.
then there were the bands that oops
Yeah,
and never worked out. Like remember Jellyfish?
loved Jellyfish.
That was me
Yeah,
too, and that was one of the biggest bidding wars I can ever remember. And I think was it Geffen that won?
I was Virgin. Yeah, Virgin.
Virgin won that massive bidding war, and then 2 records, and they went nowhere. But boy, that Belly Button record is still perfection to me.
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, you know, whenever I see Roger or Jason, those guys, and you know, those guys are playing with like Beck and you know whatever they're happen to be doing. If it's, I always tell them how much I love those records.
Wait, Roger Manning plays with Beck?
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
Oh, cool.
plays
That's
with a
nice
lot.
to know. I saw them open for Lenny Kravitz at the Metro,
Wow, that's a great
which is a random pairing.
Yeah. How did it work
Craig,
out?
how did what work out?
How was it? Did people like both bands, or what was it like?
Everyone loved it. I mean, they had their like Dr. Seuss set, and
Yeah.
you know, I'd never seen a drummer up front and center that was a lead vocalist. It was rad. And
You know,
then you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it was so cool. They put out this promo CD called Jellyfish Comes Alive, where they covered Jet by Paul McCartney and they covered No Matter What by Badfinger. Those covers were amazing. You know, I love that. Their love for power pop they wore on their sleeve, you know. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and it's just like everybody loved it, and it just didn't work out. Everyone thought they were going to be like, I don't know, like people were like, oh, they're better than XTC, and yeah, sometimes
XTC
everything can be right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Where were you in the first time you heard Nevermind?
It was sent to me the 45 and a CD CD single, I should say. What it
Teen
was?
Spirit?
Yeah, Teen Spirit, because I had played Sliver on the radio because I was turned on to those guys and had Bleach, and Sliver was the new single. It was before the album came out. It was like the last thing in between that and Bleach. And I added it to the radio station in Asbury Park, New Jersey, where I was, HTG. I love the song, and I got Bleach, and I heard School, and I heard their cover of the Shocking Blues Love Buzz, which is the band who did Venus in like 1969. And I thought these guys were cool. And plus, all my friends from other parts of the country, and like even from England, like a lot of English musicians, I knew were like, dude, we love that band Nirvana. So it made me really pay attention. So I added Sliver, and I was in touch with people at Sub Pop. And the next thing I know, they're signed to Geffen. So as soon as they get it, I remember Mark Cates from Geffen saying, I got the new Nirvana single. I'm like overnighting it to you, FedEx. And I put it on and went, and I was just explosive. And he goes, now I'm sending you a cassette advance of the album. And I took it and I listened to it in my car, and I was like, I just got lost in it. I thought it was great. I was driving around in New Jersey down the highway, the empty highway, and then kept driving. And I just kept listening to it. It was something really, I loved it. It had a lot of elements of things that I loved about punk rock, but also it was so melodic, but also really, it just felt very vital, and dangerous at the same moment. Oh, I think you're muted, Scott.
Oh, it was also the diametric opposite of everything that was happening in recording studios. So my office at Warner Chapel was in the same building as CRC, Chicago Recording Company. So back in those days, it was Bob Clearmountain and Bob Rock and Bo Hill and all these, Robert Palmer records, and everything was just like harmonizers and reverb and room mics and ambient miking, and everything was so big and so wet, and 110 inputs on an SSL wasn't enough. And then all of a sudden, and I had a bit of an expense account where I could spend, I think it was $200 a week on CDs, which was amazing. So I'm in the record store on yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm in the record store on Rush Street, and I had all but one. I had my whole stack of long boxes, and I saw this kid razor blading a carton open, and I'm a photographer, and I saw the cover to Nevermind. I was like, great fucking photo. Let's give this a try just based on the cover. So that being the last one I picked up was the first one out of the bag. So I get into my black Saab 900 Turbo. I rip the long box in half. I throw Nevermind in, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And for months, I was like the Pied Piper, making everyone listen to this. And people were like, it sounds like guys in a room. And I was like, I know, isn't it amazing? And yeah, but I bought it for the photograph from the Nevermind cover.
That is so great. Yeah.
I mean, I never heard of the band before that.
What's that?
And I'd never heard of them before that
Yeah,
moment.
I love that you put it in, and all of a sudden you hear that opening riff and Dave Grohl's thunderous drums from Sound City and Van Nuys, recording in there. I mean,
It was just so nice to not hear all that plate reverb and all the effects. Remember when everyone just had racks for their guitars? They didn't even have pedals. Everyone was just like Eventides and that mushy wet, and Def Leppard records and Addicted to Love, and everything had that same mushy layered sound, and it was time to just strip it all away and sound like a garage again. It was the birth of deconstructionism, in my opinion.
I agree with you, and I think it was beautiful. I think in a lot of ways, and it's no disrespect to any of the bands before it, of course, but
I love them too.
yeah, I mean, there's certainly. I mean, I just like you love so much music from so many eras. You and I are like, we're just looking for good music, and good artists. We I mean, but I will say it was a great time because it was something that was needed, and it really opened the door to a lot of new music, and it was less uniformed situation where you could be DIY again, and kind of almost like the last time was like, in the new wave post-punk era where, you got bands that were all very different, doing different things. And I loved it. And I always joke that you're laughing at this, Scott. I think it's the best part of it is because the labels don't know what to make of it. So then they just start signing everything. So everybody has an opportunity. And the Pistols were responsible for that in the UK in so many ways. Because that was like,
and they did it regionally too. So like in my era, before I left Chicago, all of a sudden everything got signed from Chicago. It was, Liz Phair and Pumpkins and Urge Overkill and
I love
Michael McDermott, and everybody got signed from Chicago. Then Seattle and Soundgarden, Nirvana, and all those guys. And it became this funny regional thing, Austin,
Yeah, I love that there was that ability and bands going out to see each other. Urge Overkill, another band. Man, Saturation's a great record. I absolutely love that album.
I love Urge. What's going on with those guys?
Well, I haven't heard from Eddie or Nash in a while. That like Blackie passed away, right? Like
yeah, which was, I think I could argue was the greatest rock star name ever, Blackie Onassis.
It was one of the greatest. It was amazing. I just saw Johnny. I gotta love it.
When I met him, he was John Rowan.
Yeah, he was a very nice. He was a very nice guy, man.
And Nash Cato was another Nathan Kitrude.
Yes, absolutely. I love him. I mean, I love that record, Saturation. I love Supersonic Storybook, and the Stall EP. And I even like parts of Exit the Dragon. And a lot of people didn't give that the time of day, but I actually love a lot of that record. So.
I like it too. Did you know Nash shot the cover for Exile in Guyville for Liz Phair?
I did not know that, but I knew how tight they were, and they knew.
It was the same crowd. It was like the Urge Overkill guys, the Material Issue guys, Liz Phair. They were all bros, and Liz Phair went to my high school. She was on the track team. That's
amazing. I love that, and it's it's cool that Peter's
and Veruca Salt too.
That we love, it was so cool. We were doing this one gig, and it was great. It's for Cara to meet Louise and spend time with Louise, and I love Nina too. They were just great, man. Right?
They're great.
So awesome. There's I love that.
Nina's my friend's sister-in-law, so I see her here and there.
Please send my love when you see her. She was so nice to my oldest daughter when my daughter was a little kid, and I'd bring her into MTV. People go, "You don't look old enough to have a kid." I'm like, yeah, I'm old enough to have a kid. On the young side of it, but it was amazing. I love that. Chicago had a great scene. You really did. Chicago was a really cool city, an interesting place.
I know, but like nobody really wanted to take us seriously for the longest time, and still don't in a lot of ways. A lot of people are just like, yeah, it's flyover country until they come and they realize how vibrant and creative it is.
It's so important. I mean, I think that people make that mistake with a lot of different places because, you and I both, I know you've spent a lot of time in New York, and I've lived in New York.
Yeah.
And grew up by there, having grown up in Jersey and just be literally a drive away or a bus ride or train ride away from all those concerts, like seeing the Clash do at the night he smashed the bass, London Calling, seeing Paul Simonon smash his bass was one of the most amazing moments. And I got to be honest with you, when I saw that, because I love London Calling, it's another one of my favorite double albums. And I'm there, Scott, and I go, is he doing a Pete Townsend or is he really pissed off? Like I was trying to figure it out, and I was on Mick Jones' side of the stage, but 30 rows back. But I witnessed that moment. I obviously love that record. Yeah, I love.
Speaking of,
go ahead.
I was saying, speaking of Jersey, I'm still in touch with Snake Sabo from Skid Row sometimes.
Dude, Snake's a great guy, man.
Awesome.
And Rachel, I love those dudes. They grew up in the town next to me. I grew up in East Brunswick, New Jersey, and
Sayreville.
And those guys, Sayreville is the touches on the one border. So, do you know my first DJ job? You'll appreciate this. So I was doing everything everybody else does. I was doing security, working like convenience stores, whatever, deliver, in the back, setting up chairs for like parties and banquets, you're a kid and doing things underage. And then my first DJ job was at a strip club called JK's Talk of the Town by this Hostways Hotel, where Metallica would go and stay when they were thrown out of the place because they were there in East Brunswick for Megaforce Records. That's where, the whole thing, which is amazing. It was like literally at the Route 18 flea market, the store that Johnny and Marsha Zazula had. But, so the Sayreville situation was, I realized I could I can spin out, I can get paid to do this. So there's this restaurant bar, and was called Charlie's Uncle. And at night they would turn the lounge into like a place for people to come and drink and hang out and dance. And so the entertainment there was New Wave nights with Matt Pinfield Tuesday, and Wednesday and Thursday, Richie Zambora and friends, his trio. So it was me and Richie were the entertainment there. And then
that's amazing.
And then John and Tico and Dave and those guys eventually came and asked him to leave. And, a couple years later, Slippery When Wet comes out, and those guys are absolutely huge. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, David told me I was on the New Jersey tour for maybe 20 dates, not doing anything. I'll tell you why in a second. But David had told me that his dad owned like a dry cleaners or something, and he got in the band because he had a van.
Yeah. That's an amazing story. And he's such a good dude. Like there was a period where when I was moving to California again, where I would go down and stay in Dave Bryan's beach house in Bay Head, Maniloking in Jersey. And because his wife Lexi, his second wife, they built a replica of the nightclub, the Melody in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where I DJ'd for years. She loved it so much that their basement is the club that I spun in.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
So how I met those guys is one of my fraternity brothers at Boulder. His father was like a tour accountant and is that what you call it? A production accountant, tour accountant?
Yeah,
for all of Doc McGee's bands.
Yeah.
So I was like, guys, what are we doing for spring break? And Scott Colbrenner, Bruce Colbrenner's son, goes, you guys want to go see Bon Jovi in Vegas? We'll be hooked up. And I'm like, fuck yeah. So group about 5 of us, we get to stay on the same floor at the Aladdin with Bon Jovi and Skid Row, and we're in it with all of them. And And I like at the time I knew my future. I was sure I knew my future. I wanted to be a big rock and roll impresario like Doc McGee, minus the drug dealing and all that. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm watching Skid Row open and I see Doc come stick his head around the side of the stage, look into the pit, and then go back. And I'm like, I have an all access pass. This is my moment. I'm going to corner him. So I run back to the Thomas and Mack Center and I'm like, Doc, I want to do what you do. And he goes, can I give you some music business advice? I was like, sure. He goes, don't ever go into jazz. You know how much the richest guy in the history of jazz made? And I said, no, how much? And he goes, $1. He goes, what do you, he's laughing. And I go, he goes, Scott, what are you doing right now? I said, nothing. He goes, you want to go meet some girls? And I'm like, yeah, Doc McGee, I'll go meet some girls with you. And he opens up a metal filing cabinet and he hands me a stack of after show passes this big. And he goes, go meet some girls, no boyfriends. So I didn't get the job, but it was a funny anecdote.
That is a great story.
But then Tony Bon Jovi, not the Power Station one, but the cousin was like a tour manager, a production manager. I got to know him. So I would just bug him. I'd be like, hey, I'm in Milwaukee. I'm in Indianapolis. He'd be like, I got you.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, I had every color backstage pass made. So I could just be like, oh, tonight it's orange.
Yeah, that's great. Those guys are great guys, man. I'm very, there's this kind of Jersey pride thing, I know, but it's like whether it's Springsteen or Bon Jovi or Gaslight Anthem or My Chemical Romance. Yes, all those Four Seasons. You know what I mean? Like it's just there's from growing up there, and
we all have our civic pride.
Yeah, we do. And it was one of those things, where I love that because when I watched the Bon Jovi documentary, I was like there when he was opening for everybody he could in his band's Atlantic City Expressway. And I interviewed him recently for KLOS here for the documentary. And I'm like, John, because I worked with Dorothea for a little while too, his wife, at another bar where I was DJing.
She got married. They got married that night in Vegas.
That's amazing.
That night when I first met them, I was like, where's everybody going? And then we found out the next day that they snuck off and John got
That's great. And that relationship is rock solid, man. It's amazing.
There's really, I have to say that rock and roll marriages that make it are really strong bonds. Like I was over at Gilby and Daniela's house doing her podcast with Barbara Ann, Zach Wilde's wife.
Yeah.
And Steve and Josie Stevens, and it's like the ones that make it are really close.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's how I feel too about Steven.
Susan and Duff.
I love that. The best. Oh my god, yeah. I love them both. Both
Steve's
so
coming
amazing.
Steve's coming on my show.
Yeah, he's the best. I mean, I love him. It's just, I think the truth is we've always started to gravitate towards really cool people because we love the music and we love it's just, you try to find like-minded people, but also people that are good, like that have good hearts. And but I'll tell you a funny story. So I'd never asked John this all these years. So I'm starting to do the interview. He's home. And I go, hey, John, I know, in the new documentary, I know you're going to be talking about Atlantic City Expressway and John Bon Jovi and the Wild Ones. I go, you know what? I never asked you after all those years. Here's what, man. I go, is the Wild Ones from the Tom Petty song or the Thin Lizzy song? And he goes, the Tom Petty song. He goes, but he points to the back wall and there's a film.
Wait, you're breaking up. Can you hear me? I think we have a bandwidth situation.
Yeah, so
can you hear me? Okay,
yeah,
you're back. You broke up for a second.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you heard that thing, but it was I just love that you and I have so many mutual friends, which is incredible. And I love your stories because the thing is, that's what's great about your book too. I just I love stories. And I think one of the things that's really important about, when I do my radio shows, I love to just share stories. And it's not like I'm never, fucking anybody over. I'm not telling people's.
No, that's my rule. I don't hurt people
ever. And I mean, me too. Yeah. I just
never believe. And we all have like
Oh, yeah.
horrible stories, but it's just karmically, I wouldn't do it for any amount of money, you know?
No, neither would I. And people have tried to get me to do that. And I just told them no fucking way about, try to get me to talk about certain shit in docs. And I'm like, fuck yeah. I go, if it ain't positive or fun or funny, and the people don't agree with it, then I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I mean, I've got photos from back in the day that could have bought me a house 5 times over, but I would just never. I'd rather starve than do that.
same here. Because you know what? All we got is our word. And one thing I learned when I got sober, was like, it's so important to me that, I show up for what I say I'm going to show up for, and then I'm there.
Same. If I shake your hand and I look you in the eye, it's exactly the same as a legally binding contract. Even if it ends up being a bad deal for me in the end, I said I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. You know?
Yeah, I've done that too. And believe me, we've all done those. We're like, shit, it was. Why did I agree to that? But you do.
Yeah, I broke even. I lost money, but you know what I said? I'm going to do it.
That's exactly what. It's funny. Kara and I were joking about that because there was a situation, I don't know, maybe a year ago where I agreed to do something. I'm like, I'm actually losing money doing this, but I'm like, but I already agreed to it, and I will not renege. Yeah. But more importantly, we're rich in good experiences, man, and that's the best because I'm around good people like yourself. I love music so much, and I mean, for me, that's the spectrum. And the thing that's good is, like I said, on these radio shows I do, I get to talk about the history of music, the stories, and things that are interesting, not just stats. Sure, you can tell a couple of stats, but it's the stories of what makes the songs and the experience.
Yeah, the humanity.
Humanity is everything, so because that's how the songs have so much, for us, guys like you and I, we love music so much, and I'm sure a lot of people watching feel the same thing. Music just evokes so much emotion and feeling. There's so much power in it that, that's what we want to celebrate. And I really care about, what people were thinking or interesting things, stories around it. But, definitely not shitting on people. That's not, you know what I mean? That's the thing. I love being positive. And
yeah, I'll tease a little bit here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'll tell funny stories,
in a Gallagherian sort of way, but it's not rooted in hate,
Yeah,
I'll do a little ball busting, but not.
You gotta bust balls. You gotta bust balls.
Yeah, of course, you're Jersey, I'm Chicago. It's like how we say hello.
Yeah, exactly. It's how we say hello, and and it's in our nature too. Which is amazing.
All right, my network's gonna kill me. We're so over, but we should do it again. And can we get together and go see some concerts and do this proper?
Oh, we have to. Yeah, Kara loves you, and now I do too. So we got to hang out. All right. And I see you out, and I'm like, oh, we got to hang with Scott, man.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm in West Hollywood. I'm always down.
Yeah, let's definitely do it. Any shows coming up you're going to soon?
I'm not booked for anything, but I would love to see Maiden.
Yeah.
Who else is coming up? Yeah, I got to go through the list, but yeah, I will even go to concerts of people that I don't think I like. That's how much I love concerts.
Yeah,
I once saw
you might be blown away. It might change your mind.
I saw Priest, Megadeth, the Three Tenors, Barry Manilow, and Yo-Yo Ma in the same 1 week period.
Yeah, see how diverse that is. That's great, and
they were all great.
You found something in every one of them that you absolutely loved, or something you liked, or maybe got surprised by. So why don't we do this? We should make and have dinner in the next week or two. You mean
I'm here. Let's do it.
All right, absolutely. So Scott, I'm going to reach out to you about that, and just
great.
I'll get you, me and Kara on a thread. But no,
thank you so much for doing this. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, it was fun. I thank you for having me on. It was awesome to you and tell stories, and we both went to Queen. We went to see Queen and Bowie. And
let's call this a to be continued, because I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Absolutely. So thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
All right, pal. Thank you.
Thanks for wearing the Yes shirt. I'm going to go listen to Perpetual Change, or yours is No Disgrace. I love those tracks. I'll see you later.
All right. Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. It was great. Great to have you on. Appreciate it.
The Bad Decisions podcast was produced by Cam Borum and Brock Workman of Hurrdat Media. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss a new episode. You can also purchase my book, The Big Book of Bad Decisions, wherever books are sold, and sign copies at baddecisionsbook.com. A special thanks to today's guest, Matt Pinfield, for joining me today. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Thanks for listening.